Today, let's explore the journey of one of the most iconic names in fashion, Dior. From its humble origins to its global stature, join us as we uncover the story behind the Dior we know and love. Make sure to subscribe and press the bell icon on the channel for more updates. Founder of the brand Dior, Christian Dior lived a life full of unexpected changes, from extreme wealth and abundance to dire poverty and homelessness, and back again. Want to know how this unusual visionary managed to establish one of the most powerful brands on the planet? Then keep watching. Early life and family background. Christian Dior was born on the 21st of January 1905 in Granville, a seaside town in the north of France. His family later moved to the bustling city of Paris, and this is where Christian would spend his youth. He was the second of 5 children born to Madeleine and Alexandre Dior, and his father, Alexandre, was the owner of a highly successful fertilizer manufacturer. It was thanks to this that the Dior family lived such a comfortable bourgeois life, at least for some time. Youth and interests. As a boy, little Christian lived in his own world. He was amused by anything that was sparkling or frivolous, but his greatest love was for flowers and plants. He was also passionate about art, and he hoped to someday become an architect. His father, however, had other plans for him. Alexandre didn't think his son would be able to make a living for himself as an artist, and instead, he wanted him to become a diplomat. Although it didn't interest young Dior at all, he eventually caved to his father's wishes, and in 1925, his major political science. This way, he would surely find work as a diplomat later on. After his graduation in 1928, 23-year-old Dior found his way back to the creative world. Art gallery venture, he opened a small art gallery with his father's money, and in exchange for the financial support, his father's only demand was that the family name should not appear above the gallery or be used in connection with it. Happy to finally be able to get into art again, Christian quickly accepted, and in a short time the gallery was open. He sold art by the likes of Pablo Picasso, Jean Cocteau, and Max Jacob. Personal tragedies and financial troubles. But in 1931, the unimaginable happened. Both Christian's mother and older brother passed away, and due to the Great Depression, his father lost control of the family business. Just 3 years after setting the place up, Christian was forced to close it again, and financial troubles were looming. Losing his mother and brother deeply affected the young Christian, and without financial help from his father, he was now forced to find creative ways to earn a living. To make ends meet, he sold all the stocks of the gallery. But this wasn't enough. He lost his apartment and had to sleep on a friend's floor. Struggles and recovery, but his darkest days were yet to come. Due to his poor diet and subpar living conditions, Christian contracted tuberculosis, and he spent a year in recovery. So far, so failed, you might think. But Dior was a survivor, and once healed, he found new ways to make money. He started out by selling his fashion sketches for about 10 cents each, and not much later, he also began selling sketches of hat designs to newspapers. Entry into fashion. Dior clearly had a talent, and he was offered a job as a design assistant with Swiss-born but Paris-based courtier Robert Piguet. Dior later said that Robert Piguet taught me the virtues of simplicity through which true elegance must come. Working with Robert was Dior's first step towards a serious involvement in fashion, and it opened many doors for him too. Impact of World War. He would only get to explore those some years later, because now the Second World War began, and Dior was called up for military service by the French army. While some sources say that he served as an officer, others state that he did compulsory farm work. But one thing is certain, Dior did not stay until the very end of the war. Instead, he opted out, returned to Paris, and began working in haute couture for Lucien Lalonde. Business acumen and war years. Lucien was more a businessman than a designer, but he cleverly employed young talents to produce ideas, which he then edited into a collection. Throughout the remaining years of the war, Lalande's design house dressed the women of both Nazis and French collaborators, and Dior's ambitions slowly but surely began to sprout into his own ideas for a business. Post-war opportunity. At the end of the war, millionaire Marcel Boussac noticed that he had factories standing idle. To keep the machines running, he wanted to buy a new fashion house, and seeing Dior's potential, he invited him over. He offered him the opportunity to revive a defunct fashion house called Philippe et Gaston, but Dior refused. By now, Christian was no longer interested in simply working for others, and he surely wasn't going to try and raise a failed company from the dead either. Creating his own brand, what he wanted was to make a fresh start under his own name. Forget trying to revive other people's brands, he wanted to create his own. And luckily for him, Boussac agreed. The millionaire handed him a large sum of money, and with his financial backing, a 41-year-old Dior could now launch his true career. That same year, he opened up his very own boutique at the famous locale 30 Avenue, Montaigne, and the Christian Dior brand was finally created. Dior's father died in December of that year, but I guess we can assume that, this time, he didn't have a problem with his son using the family name. Initial success in the following months, Christian began working harder than ever before. And while he may have achieved a degree in political science, it quickly became clear that his true education came from somewhere else. Associating with so many of the world's greatest artists had instilled a unique eye for fashion in him, and his privileged early years truly shone through. During the previous 2 decades, a pragmatic trend had taken over the entire fashion industry. This trend had reached its pinnacle during the Second World War, when clothing was rationed. But Dior had never been a fan of it. He wasn't interested in pragmatism. He wanted dreams and glamour. And now that the war was over, he felt that it was time for a change. Launching Coroli collection, he wanted to reintroduce femininity and a focus on luxury, and what better way to do that than by creating a collection that was unashamedly decadent. Spurred on by his inspiration, it took less than 3 months from the brand's creation to launch its first couture collection. The big flower lover that he was, Dior named the collection Coroli, and the pieces were truly groundbreaking at the time. The look harked back to an earlier Belle Epoque silhouette, and it was romantic, lavish, and feminine, all at the same time. Think lifted busts, softly sloped shoulders, cinched-in corseted waists, and puffy long skirts with taffeta and tulle. The garments were opulent, and each dress had an average of 20 yards of fabric. As you can guess, this didn't necessarily make them easy to wear, but the designs were revolutionary, and the collection was a huge success. Controversy and criticism, however, not everyone was pleased, and one person in particular made some snarky remarks. You see, at that time, Dior's style was dubbed the New Look. The reason for this is that his look was so different from the androgynous styles which had been all the rage until then. More specifically, the androgynous style which Chanel had been a pioneer. Coco was the patron saint of pants, and to her, Dior's pieces seemed too stiff, too fussy, and most importantly, too hard to breathe in. She accused him of dragging women back to the 19th century ideals of femininity. And she once even growled, "Dior doesn't dress women, he upholsters them." Of course, Dior himself saw it differently, and he once said, "I think of my work as ephemeral architecture dedicated to the beauty of the female body." Expanding the brand. In the United States, many women agreed with Coco, and when Dior visited in the autumn of 1947, demonstrators welcomed him with placards, urging him to go home. Despite the backlash in the US, Dior persevered. By now, he was already a major player in the revival of couture in France. But he wanted to expand even further, and this globalization went rather quickly. 1 year after launching his collection, he opened a store in New York City, and with the global launch came an expanded collection as well. Dior understood that to continue his legacy, He needed to provide the entire fashion experience. So, like many other fashion houses, he began with creating a fragrance. He called it Miss Dior, and it served as an ode to his sister, Catherine. Later, he also licensed the Dior name for accessories. Now, Dior lovers could fully capture the new look from head to toe by buying the clothes, the jewelry, and the scent. Legacy and succession. In the following years, the brand continued to flourish. Dior went on to dress the biggest stars of the time. The House of Dior was a highly respected fashion empire. It was also around this time that the now world-famous Yves Saint Laurent entered the picture. The fresh-faced 19-year-old initially began working as Dior's assistant. But it didn't take long for Dior to notice his potential. In fact, he admired the young boy's eye for fashion so much that he wanted him to be his successor when the time would come. Little did anyone know that time would come sooner than expected. In 1957, Dior traveled to Italy to vacation in the town of Montecatini. But while there, he suffered his third heart attack and died at the age of 52. The entire fashion world felt the loss deeply, and to keep the brand from veering off course, Yves was given the role of artistic director. The young talent kept Christian's legacy and creative vision alive by using the same fabrics and proportions. But he also introduced a softer silhouette and pieces that were lighter and easier to wear. While many collections were a hit, the industry struggled to accept someone else leading the brand. And when Yves was drafted into the French army in 1960, Dior's management didn't object to him leaving. Following Yves' departure, Marc Bohan was appointed creative head. He instilled a more conservative style and brought the label's designs back to follow more closely what Christian Dior himself had done. He took the classic concept and brought it into the 1960s by streamlining it slightly. This gave it a more modern twist, while still sticking to the Christian Dior look. With Marc at the helm, Dior once again became the feminine brand beloved by so many, and the subsequent collections were a hit. Marc Bohan's impact. Marc was quickly credited as the man who kept the Dior label at the forefront of fashion, and Women's Wear Daily even went as far as to claim that he rescued the firm. For over a decade, Marc continued to build the brand, making it even more internationally successful than ever before. Stores started popping up in more cities like London and Hong Kong, and the Dior fashion house was catapulted to the top of the industry. Dior had created worldwide brand recognition. Dior's financial troubles. In 1978, the Boussac Group filed for bankruptcy, and that also included its assets. Someone was very happy with this news, though Bernard Arnault, the billionaire who is currently running the LVMH empire. Bernard Arnault's acquisition. Ever since he was a young boy, Bernard had been obsessed with Dior, and the idea of buying up its parent company was music to his ears. When Arnault took charge of Dior, he assumed the roles of chairman, CEO, and managing director. Over the years, a slew of impressive creative directors also added their own little twists to the brand's looks. And despite later being folded into LVMH, Dior continued to be its own impressive standalone brand. Dior's continued success. Today, Dior is doing well. It recorded a revenue of €28.7 billion in the first half of 2021, and the brand can rightly be titled as the epitome of the fashion industry. The luxurious fashion house has always strived to create an enduring image of itself, and it has become known for its meticulous attention to detail. It imbues its wearers with an innate sense of style, no matter the season or the time of day, and it doesn't seem like that'll change anytime soon. Christian Dior's legacy. This was the story of Christian Dior, the revolutionary visionary who almost ended up as a diplomat just to please his father. It took him 4 decades to put on a show, but when his first collection finally launched, the whole world took note. And although he passed away over a half-century ago, his Dior legacy has continued to rule the high seas of fashion ever since. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let us know what you learned from it, and don't forget to check out our channel and subscribe for more videos.